The Deep Space Monitoring Station on the dark side of the moon was quiet, as it usually was during the night shift. The soft hum of computers and occasional beeping of sensors provided a calming background noise as the two operators watched their screens with practiced attention. Tom Wilson rubbed his tired eyes and reached for his fourth cup of coffee when something caught his attention. A small blip on the long-range sensors, just beyond Pluto's orbit. At first, he thought it was just another piece of space debris, but the movement pattern was too regular, too controlled. "Hey, Robert, come take a look at this," Tom called to his colleague. "I'm seeing something weird on Section 7. Robert walked over, his footsteps echoing in the quiet station. He leaned over Tom's shoulder, squinting at the screen. The blip was now joined by several others, all moving in perfect formation. "That's not natural," Robert whispered, his coffee forgotten in his hand. "Call it in." Within minutes, the quiet station transformed into a hub of activity. Captain James Miller, commander of the International Space Defense Force's Deep Space Division, was awakened from his sleep by the urgent call. He made it to the command center in record time, his uniform slightly wrinkled, but his mind sharp. "Show me everything," he ordered, and the main screen lit up with the sensor data. The objects, whatever they were, had accelerated dramatically. They crossed the distance from Pluto to Jupiter in just under an hour, a speed that should have been impossible according to every physics textbook on Earth. As they passed Jupiter, Earth's more sophisticated sensors could finally get a proper reading. "Sir," one of the technicians called out, her voice trembling slightly. "These are ships, massive ones. The smallest is about the size of Manhattan." Captain Miller's face remained calm, but his hands gripped the command console tighter. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was arriving at their doorstep at speeds that defied their understanding of physics. "Begin First Contact Protocol Alpha," Miller commanded. "Alert all major governments. Wake up everyone who needs to be awake, and get me a direct line to these vessels." The next few hours were a blur of activity. As the alien ships entered Mars orbit, they finally responded to Earth's attempts at communication. The message they sent was broadcast simultaneously on every communication device on Earth, in perfect English. "People of Earth," the message began, its tone formal and almost bored. "Your planet has been selected for incorporation into the Galactic Empire. Your technology level has reached the minimum threshold for contact. Resistance is unnecessary and will result in unnecessary casualties. Accept Imperial rule, and your transition will be peaceful. You have 48 Earth hours to respond." In the United Nations emergency session that followed, Captain Miller presented the sensor data. The alien ships carried enough firepower to glass the planet several times over. Their technology was centuries, perhaps millennia ahead of Earth's best achievements. But Miller noticed something interesting in the data. The aliens used standard communication protocols, easily intercepted and decoded. Their ships, while powerful, followed predictable patterns. They operated like an organization that hadn't faced real resistance in a very long time. "They're overconfident," Miller explained to the UN Security Council. "They've conquered so many worlds that they've become predictable. And predictability, in warfare, is a weakness." The council members looked at each other nervously. The word warfare hung heavy in the air. "What are you suggesting, Captain?" the Secretary General asked. Miller stood straight, his expression determined. "They expect us to either surrender immediately or try to fight them conventionally. We should do neither. I have a different suggestion." As he outlined his plan, the council members' expressions changed from fear to intrigue. The aliens had given Earth 48 hours to respond. They clearly expected either submission or futile resistance. They were about to learn that humanity had a third option, one that had brought mighty empires to their knees throughout Earth's bloody history. The next day, as Captain Miller prepared Earth's response, he couldn't help but smile. The Galactic Empire thought they were dealing with just another primitive species. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Imperial Scout Commander Marcus stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath him. His small fleet of 5 ships held position just beyond the reach of Earth's primitive weapons, or at least what he thought was beyond their reach. He had conquered 17 worlds for the Empire, and the routine was always the same. Arrive, assess, report, and watch as the main fleet crushed any resistance. But something about Earth bothered him. "Show me their military bases again," he ordered. The holographic display lit up, highlighting thousands of points across Earth's surface. But what caught his attention were the ones that weren't showing up on scans, the hidden ones. "Interesting," he muttered. "They're the first species we've encountered that actually tries to hide their military installations. Most primitives display them proudly." His second-in-command, Officer Lucas, stepped forward. "Sir, we've decoded more of their information networks. You need to see this." The display changed to show Earth's military history. Marcus watched with growing fascination as battles from Earth's past played out before him. He saw smaller forces defeating larger ones repeatedly. Guerrilla warfare, ambush tactics, irregular warfare, terms the Empire had almost forgotten. "These humans," Marcus said slowly, "they don't fight like the others. Look at this pattern. Whenever they face a superior force, they don't meet it head-on. They adapt, strike from shadows, use their enemy's strength against them." He watched as more historical battles played across the screen. Vietnam, Afghanistan, the American Revolution. Small forces making life hell for larger, more powerful armies. A warning signal interrupted his study. One of their perimeter sensors had detected movement. Marcus smiled as a small human space vessel appeared, trying to sneak closer to his fleet. "Shall we destroy it?" Lucas asked, weapon systems already targeting the craft. "No," Marcus replied. "Let's watch." The human vessel was small, barely armed according to their scans. It moved erratically, seeming almost clumsy. Marcus's smile grew wider as he realized what they were doing. "They're testing us," he said. "Testing our reaction times, our weapons range, our tracking systems. Look, they're recording everything." More human ships appeared, each one probing different aspects of the Imperial fleet's capabilities. They were like tiny mice darting around a sleeping cat, gathering information. "Sir," Lucas reported, "we've detected unusual energy readings from Earth's moon. They're building something there." Marcus checked the readings himself. The humans were constructing defense platforms, but not the usual kind. These were different, using technologies that seemed cobbled together from various sources. Some of the energy signatures didn't make sense. They seemed to flicker in and out of their sensors. "Send the report to Imperial Command," Marcus ordered. "Tell them Earth requires special attention. These humans, they're more dangerous than they appear." He drafted his report carefully. The humans had already developed basic space warfare capabilities, years ahead of where the Empire's models predicted they should be. They showed an unusual talent for adaptation and asymmetric warfare. Most concerning was their rapid technological progress. They had advanced more in the past 100 years than most species did in 1,000. The response from Imperial Command was quick and dismissive. Assessment noted. Standard conquest protocols authorized. Your concerns are overruled. Marcus stared at the message for a long time. In all his years of service, he had never felt the need to argue with command. But as he watched another group of small human ships darting around his fleet's blind spots, testing and probing, he felt a deep unease. "Send a private message to Fleet Admiral Ross," he told Lucas. "Tell him to be cautious with these humans. They're not like the others." As his ships prepared to withdraw for the main fleet's arrival, Marcus took one last look at Earth. On the surface, it looked like any other primitive world ripe for conquest. But he couldn't shake the feeling that the Empire was about to learn a harsh lesson about underestimating seemingly primitive species. The Empire thought it was going to fight a simple conquest war. Marcus suspected they were about to face something very different. the kind of war humanity had perfected over thousands of years of fighting among themselves. Admiral Thomas Walker stood in the United Earth Council's main chamber, looking at the faces of representatives from every nation. The room was silent except for the soft hum of air conditioning and the occasional nervous shuffle of papers. On the massive screen behind him, a timer counted down the hours until the Empire's deadline. 24 hours left to respond. "Ladies and gentlemen," Walker began, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "I know you're expecting a long speech about our military options, but I'm here to propose something different." He pressed a button on his remote, and the screen changed to show images from Earth's history: the American Revolution, the Vietnam War, the Afghan resistance movements, World War II resistance fighters. Throughout our history, humanity has faced stronger enemies, empires that thought their superior weapons and numbers guaranteed victory. They were wrong. Walker walked slowly across the stage, letting his words sink in. The Empire expects us to either surrender or fight a traditional war. They're ready for both. But there's a third option. He nodded to his assistant, who distributed tablets to each council member. "What you're looking at is Project Legacy, a complete historical archive of every guerrilla war, resistance movement, and asymmetric conflict in human history. Everything from ancient tribes fighting Roman legions to modern cyber warfare tactics." The council members scrolled through the data, their eyes widening. Walker continued, "The Empire thinks they're dealing with primitives who just figured out how to reach space. They don't understand that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our experience in fighting against superior forces." One of the council members, a former general, spoke up. "You want to send them our military history. Isn't that giving them our playbook?" Walker smiled. "That's exactly what I want to do. Because this isn't just military data. It's a warning. Every empire in human history thought it was invincible. Every one of them learned otherwise." He pressed another button, and the screen showed a simple message he had prepared. "To the Galactic Empire. Attached is a record of how humanity fights empires. This is not a threat. This is a lesson. This is what we do to empires. You have 24 hours to reconsider your position." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some thought it was foolish to provoke the Empire. Others worried it would make Earth look weak. But Walker waited patiently until the council president called for order. "Admiral Walker," the president said, "what makes you think this will work?" Walker stepped forward, "Because right now, they think they know what they're dealing with. This," he gestured to the archive, "this will make them doubt. And doubt is something this empire hasn't felt in a very long time." He brought up more images, detailed scans of the Empire's ships taken during their assessment. "Look at their design. Everything about them shows arrogance. Their shields only face forward. Their weapons are all designed for large-scale battles. They expect enemies to fight like they do. But we won't," he continued. "We'll fight like humans. And first, we'll make sure they know exactly what that means." The council voted. The decision wasn't unanimous, but it was clear. Earth would send its warning. 20 hours later, Admiral Walker stood in the transmission center as Earth's message was sent. The historical archive was massive. Tens of thousands of battles, resistance movements, and wars where the underdog had prevailed. Each one was a lesson written in blood and determination. As the transmission completed, Walker looked at his watch. 4 hours until the Empire's deadline. "Now we wait," he said to his staff, "and we prepare." In orbit, automated factories that had been hidden on the dark side of the moon sprang to life. Weapon systems designed to fight the Empire's technology were moved into position. Special forces teams around the world began their final preparations. The Empire had given Earth a deadline, expecting fear and submission. Instead, humanity had sent back over 10,000 years of evidence that they had picked the wrong planet to invade. The game was about to change, and only one side knew the new rules. The Imperial fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system exactly as Earth's deadline expired. 300 massive warships, each one larger than any city humanity had ever built, moved toward Earth in perfect formation. Their arrival darkened orbital sensors and caused massive tides on every planet they passed. On the Imperial command ship, Fleet Commander Peter watched Earth grow larger on his view screen. He had dismissed the humans' strange warning message as primitive posturing. The historical records they had sent remained unread in his ship's databanks. "Begin standard invasion protocol," he ordered. "Launch the first wave." 50 Imperial destroyers broke formation and pushed ahead toward Earth. Their sensors showed only a handful of small defensive satellites and a few primitive space stations. Victory would be quick and absolute, just like the 1,000 conquests before. They were wrong. The first sign that something was different came when their forward sensors detected no life signs on Earth's moon. The entire lunar surface appeared empty. "Impossible," Peter muttered. The scout reports showed multiple bases there just days ago. His answer came in the form of a massive energy spike. The moon's surface split open like a blooming flower, revealing hundreds of hidden weapon platforms. But they weren't the simple missile launchers or laser cannons the Empire expected from a primitive world. "Sir," his sensor officer shouted, "those weapons, they're using quantum technology. They've copied our own weapon systems." The Empire had never worried about encrypting their technical data. No primitive species had ever been able to understand their technology, let alone copy and improve it in a matter of days. The first wave of quantum torpedoes struck the Imperial ships before they could raise their shields. The weapons, reverse-engineered from the Empire's own designs, but modified with human ingenuity, phased right through the ship's hulls. 10 destroyers went dark in the first volley. "Impossible." Peter slammed his fist on his command chair. "They're primitives. How did they?" His words were cut off as the second part of Earth's defense revealed itself. What had appeared to be small chunks of space debris suddenly came to life. Hundreds of tiny ships, barely large enough for one pilot, swarmed around the Imperial destroyers like angry bees. The Imperial ships' weapons were designed to hit large targets at long range. They couldn't track the small, fast-moving human craft. Each tiny ship carried a single weapon, a modified mining laser that cut through the Imperial ship's engine sections with surgical precision. "Direct hit," one of the human pilots shouted over an open channel, letting the Empire hear their communications, just like shooting womp rats back home. Peter watched in horror as his first wave of ships fell into chaos. The larger Imperial vessels tried to maintain formation, but the human swarm tactics forced them to break ranks. Each time they tried to regroup, another volley of quantum torpedoes would scatter them again. "Launch all fighters," Peter ordered. "Surround those human ships." But as his fighters deployed, they faced another surprise. The humans had seeded the orbital space with millions of tiny devices that looked like space junk. As soon as the Imperial fighters passed near them, the devices attached themselves to the ship's hulls and began broadcasting false signals. "Sir, our targeting systems are compromised," his fighter commander reported. "The ships are showing up in multiple locations." In the chaos, Peter finally opened the historical records Earth had sent. His eyes widened as he read about guerrilla warfare, about how smaller forces had defeated larger ones throughout human history. They had warned him. They had told him exactly what they would do. The first wave of his invasion force was in ruins. 30 ships destroyed, 15 disabled, and the rest in retreat. And this was just the beginning. On Earth, in the Combined Military Command Center, Admiral Walker watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. "Send the next message to the Imperial fleet," he ordered. The message was simple. "That was just our warning shot. Lesson 1 is over. Would you like to continue your education?" Commander Lisa Reed sat in her tiny space fighter, watching as the massive Imperial fleet regrouped after their first defeat. Her small craft, barely larger than an old Earth fighter jet, hung motionless among thousands of pieces of space debris. The Empire's sensors couldn't tell which pieces were junk and which were waiting fighters. "All Wolfpack units, check in," she whispered into her radio. One by one, 200 other pilots responded. Each one was hiding, just like her, scattered across Earth's orbit. The Empire was angry now. Their main fleet was moving in, all 300 ships forming a giant wall of metal and energy. They had learned from their first mistake and were keeping their shields up. But that was exactly what Lisa had expected. "Remember the plan," she said to her pilots. "Just like the old submarine warfare books. Hit and fade. Never stay in one place. Make them chase shadows." The Imperial fleet launched their second attack. This time, they moved slower, more cautiously. Their massive ships formed a tight defensive formation, shields overlapping. They thought they were being careful. They were actually making themselves a perfect target. "Wolfpack 1, begin Operation Hornet's Nest," Lisa ordered. 50 small fighters broke away from their hiding spots. They moved in a chaotic pattern, seemingly random. The Imperial ships tracked them with their weapons but held their fire, waiting for a clear shot that would never come. Then Lisa gave the second order: release the drones. Each fighter released 20 tiny drones, no bigger than basketballs. The drones looked like debris, but they carried a special weapon designed by Earth's best engineers: electronic warfare pods that could hack into the Empire's communication systems. The Imperial fleet didn't even notice as the drones attached to their hulls. They were too focused on tracking the fighters. That was their second mistake. "Begin broadcast," Lisa commanded. The drones activated all at once. They began broadcasting every kind of signal they could: radar, radio, heat, magnetic. The Imperial ship's sensors were suddenly overwhelmed with thousands of false readings. "What's happening?" An Imperial commander's panicked voice came over the open channel. "I'm seeing targets everywhere." That was when Lisa launched the real attack. While the Imperial ships were confused by the false signals, 200 more fighters emerged from hiding. Each one carried a special torpedo designed to disable rather than destroy. "All units, fire on designated weak points," Lisa ordered. "Remember your training. Hit the engine cooling systems first." The torpedoes struck with surgical precision. On their own, they wouldn't have done much damage. But Lisa's team had studied the Imperial ship's designs. They knew that hitting the cooling systems would force the ships to either shut down their main weapons or risk overheating. "Sir, we're losing weapon systems across the fleet," an Imperial officer reported. "We have to power down, or the cores will melt." The Imperial ships started to break formation, each captain trying to protect their own vessel. That was exactly what Lisa had been waiting for. "Wolfpack 2, begin Operation Bee Swarm," she commanded. Another group of Earth fighters appeared, these ones carrying electromagnetic pulse weapons. They darted between the scattered Imperial ships, firing EMPs that temporarily disabled shield generators and communication systems. "This is impossible," an Imperial commander shouted over the command channel. "They're primitives. How are they doing this?" Lisa smiled as she led her fighter through the chaos. The Empire had expected a straightforward battle, ship against ship, just like they'd fought 1,000 times before. Instead, they were facing hundreds of small, fast targets using tactics they'd never seen in space combat. "Final phase," Lisa ordered. "All units, implement the Thermopylae protocol." The Earth fighters began herding the disabled and scattered Imperial ships toward a specific point in space. The Empire's commanders didn't realize it, but they were being maneuvered into a trap that would make their first defeat look like a minor setback. Lisa checked her tactical display and smiled. The Empire was about to learn another lesson about human warfare. Never assume you've seen all our tricks. In the Grand Command Chamber of the Imperial flagship, Fleet Commander Peter stood before a holographic display of the battle. His face was pale, and his hands shook slightly as he watched another group of his ships go dark. The massive room, usually filled with the confident chatter of officers, was eerily quiet. "Play it again," he ordered. "Show me how they did it." The hologram replayed the last battle. He watched as his mighty warships, each one capable of destroying an entire planet, were taken apart by vessels so small they looked like insects in comparison. The humans weren't fighting like any species they had ever encountered. "Sir," his tactical officer spoke up, "I've finished analyzing their attack patterns. They're using something called aircraft carrier tactics from their historical records." Peter finally understood why Scout Commander Marcus had warned them about Earth. He opened the historical documents Earth had sent, really reading them this time. His eyes widened as he saw centuries of warfare, each example showing how smaller forces had defeated larger ones. "They've been practicing this their entire history," he whispered, "fighting against superior forces, turning weakness into strength." A new alert sounded. On the tactical display, the remaining Earth fighters were pulling back, forming a new pattern. But something was wrong. The sensors were picking up strange energy readings from Earth's moon. "Sir," his sensor officer shouted, "the humans, they've built something inside the moon. It's like nothing we've ever seen." The surface of the moon split open wider than before, revealing a massive weapon. But it wasn't a standard weapon. It was a giant mirror array, made from thousands of reflective panels. "What are they doing?" Peter wondered aloud. His answer came in the form of a blinding flash. The humans had turned their sun into a weapon, using the mirror array to focus and direct its energy. The concentrated solar beam struck the Imperial fleet's right flank, overwhelming their shields with pure solar power. "Direct hit on 30 ships," someone reported, shields failing across the entire sector. Peter watched in amazement. The humans had built this weapon in days, using knowledge gained from studying Imperial technology. They had turned their own star system into a weapon. In his command center on Earth, Admiral Walker watched the Imperial fleet's confusion with grim satisfaction. "Send the next message," he ordered. The message appeared on every Imperial screen. "Your shields were designed to stop energy weapons and missiles. But did you ever consider someone would use a star against you?" Lesson 5. Use your environment. Peter slammed his fist on his command console. The Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds, but none had ever fought like this. The humans were using their own arrogance against them, turning their technological superiority into a weakness. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we're detecting new signals. The humans, they've infected our computer systems with something they call computer viruses. Our ships are starting to lose control of their navigation systems." Peter watched helplessly as his fleet began to move on its own, ships turning their weapons on each other. The humans had turned their own technology against them, using their interconnected systems as a weakness rather than a strength. "Full retreat," Peter ordered, his voice hoarse. "Get us out of this system." But even retreat wasn't simple. The humans had scattered thousands of small mines throughout the solar system, each one designed to disable rather than destroy. They weren't trying to annihilate the Imperial fleet. They were teaching it a lesson. As his damaged flagship limped away from Earth, Peter received one final message from the humans. "This concludes today's lesson in human warfare. We trust you'll make the right decision about Earth's future in the Empire. If not, we have many more lessons to teach." For the first time in the Empire's history, they had met a species that didn't just fight. They innovated, adapted, and turned their enemies' strength against them. The Empire had wanted to add another primitive world to their collection. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous: human ingenuity. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Walker stood in the United Earth Council chamber again. This time, the room wasn't filled with fear. Instead, there was a quiet pride in the air. On the main screen, a message from the Imperial High Command blinked steadily. "They want to talk," Walker announced. "Not about our surrender, but about peace." The chamber erupted in cheers. Humanity had done what no other species in known space had managed. They had forced the mighty Galactic Empire to the negotiating table as equals. On the Imperial capital world, light years away, The High Council was having a very different meeting. Fleet Commander Peter stood before them, explaining Earth's unique capabilities. In just 7 days, he reported, they reversed-engineered our shield technology, created weapons specifically designed to counter our systems, and turned their entire solar system into a defensive weapon. He paused, letting that sink in. And they warned that we've only seen a fraction of what they can do. The Imperial Council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. For 10,000 years, they had conquered without real resistance. Now, a supposedly primitive world had not only stopped them, but had done so while barely revealing their full capabilities. "Show them," Peter commanded. The chamber's displays lit up with images from the battle. Human fighters dancing between Imperial ships like water flowing around rocks. The moon opening to reveal its hidden weapons. The solar mirror array that had turned their own star against them. But most importantly, the historical records Earth had sent as a warning. "They tried to warn us," Peter said. "They showed us exactly what they would do, and we were too proud to listen. This is a species that has spent their entire history fighting against superior forces and winning." Back on Earth, the first Imperial diplomatic shuttle landed at the newly constructed United Earth spaceport. Scout Commander Marcus, who had first warned about Earth's potential, stepped out as the new Imperial ambassador. Admiral Walker met him at the landing pad. "Welcome to Earth," he said with a slight smile. "This time as a friend." Marcus looked around at the spaceport. Just days ago, this had been an empty field. The humans' ability to build and adapt continued to amaze him. "My superiors have a question," Marcus said as they walked. "Your warning message, the historical records you sent. You knew we wouldn't read them carefully at first, didn't you?" Walker's smile widened. "We knew your pride would make you ignore them. Just like every empire in our history ignored warnings from those they thought were beneath them. It was all part of the lesson." In orbit, Commander Lisa Reed watched from her fighter as Imperial ships now approached Earth peacefully. Her small fighter squadrons, which had proved so effective against the massive Imperial warships, were now being studied by Imperial military observers. "They want to learn from us," she told her pilots. "The Empire has realized that bigger isn't always better, and that sometimes the most powerful weapon is the ability to adapt." The next few weeks saw a flurry of activity as Earth took its place in galactic society, but not as a conquered world or a subject state. Instead, Earth became known as the planet that had taught the Empire its greatest lesson in 10,000 years. In the Imperial Academy, they began teaching what they called the Earth Doctrine. Never underestimate a species based on their technological level alone. Study their history, learn their ways of war, and most importantly, listen when they try to warn you. 1 year later, Admiral Walker stood on the deck of Earth's first official diplomatic vessel, preparing to visit the Imperial capital. The ship was small by Imperial standards, but it incorporated both human and Imperial technology in ways neither side had imagined possible. "Ready to give them some more lessons?" Commander Lisa asked, standing beside him. Walker looked out at the stars, remembering how close they had come to being just another conquered world. Instead, they had become something unprecedented, the first species to join the Empire as true equals. "The greatest lesson," he said, "is that strength comes in many forms. We taught them that sometimes the smallest opponent can be the most dangerous, especially when you give them a reason to fight." The ship engaged its engines, heading for the Empire's capital. Earth had earned its place among the stars not through conquest or submission, but by being exactly what humans had always been: adaptable, innovative, and absolutely unwilling to bow to tyranny.